The day I signed the papers selling our family home of 30 years, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders I hadn't even realized was there. My daughter Rebecca had spent the last year treating me like an unwelcome guest in my own house, the house she assumed would one day be hers. But as I watched the new owners receive their keys, I remembered her cold words from 6 months earlier. "Mom, the basement apartment is perfectly fine for someone your age. You don't need all this space anymore." What she didn't know was that I'd already decided. If I wasn't good enough for the master bedroom, I wasn't going to leave her the house at all. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Memorial Day weekend last year. The kind of perfect early summer day that makes you grateful to be alive. Clear blue skies, temperature hovering around 75 degrees, and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of my prized roses through the open kitchen windows. I'd spent all morning preparing for our annual family barbecue, marinating steaks the way Frank, my late husband, had taught me before cancer took him 3 years ago. I hummed as I chopped fresh herbs from my garden for the potato salad, occasionally glancing at the clock. Rebecca and her husband Nathan were due to arrive with my grandchildren at noon. My son-in-law had recently been promoted to senior partner at his law firm, and I was eager to celebrate his success. Though we'd never been particularly close, I respected Nathan's work ethic and how well he provided for my grandchildren, 12-year-old Olivia and 9-year-old James. I'd just finished setting the patio table with my good dishes, the ones Frank and I had received as wedding gifts 40 years ago, when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Wiping my hands on my apron, I stepped onto the front porch, my face already breaking into a smile. Rebecca emerged from their sleek black SUV first, looking polished as always in designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her shoulder-length blonde hair was freshly highlighted, and even from a distance, I could see the glint of the diamond tennis bracelet Nathan had given her for their 15th anniversary. "Mom," she called, her voice warm and cheerful as she waved, but I noticed she didn't approach for a hug. These days, Rebecca saved her affection for public appearances and social media posts. Nathan followed, tall and imposing in pressed khakis and a polo shirt, his salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed. He gave me a perfunctory nod before turning to help the children from the car. Olivia, already showing signs of her mother's beauty, but with her father's serious demeanor, was fixated on her phone, barely looking up as she mumbled, "Hi, Grandma." Only James bounded up the steps to throw his arms around my waist. "Grandma Carol," he exclaimed, "did you make your famous brownies?" I hugged him tight, savoring the moment. "You bet I did, sweetheart, with extra chocolate chips, just for you." We moved to the backyard. The pleasant afternoon took its first uncomfortable turn. Rebecca walked through my kitchen with a critical eye, running her finger along the countertop as if checking for dust. "Mom, when was the last time you updated anything in here? This wallpaper has to be from the 90s. I kept my smile fixed in place. "Your father always liked the pattern. I never saw any reason to change it." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Dad's been gone for 3 years. You should really think about modernizing if you ever want to sell this place." "Sell?" I echoed, confused. "Why would I sell my home?" Nathan cleared his throat as he set a cooler of expensive craft beer on the counter. "Actually, Carol, that's something we wanted to discuss with you today." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as we moved to the patio. The steak sizzled on the grill, but suddenly I wasn't very hungry. After we'd filled our plates and the children had wandered off, Olivia to a corner of the yard where she could text her friends in peace, and James to examine a new anthill he'd discovered, Rebecca set down her fork and exchanged a look with Nathan. "Mom," she began, her voice shifting into what I recognized as her business tone. Rebecca had worked in real estate before becoming a full-time mother, and she still used her sales pitch voice when she wanted something. "Nathan and I have been talking, and we think it's time for you to consider your future." I took a sip of my iced tea, waiting. "This house is far too big for one person," she continued. "It's nearly 3,000 square feet, and the property taxes alone must be eating up your fixed income, not to mention the maintenance." "I manage just fine," I said quietly. "Your father left me well provided for." Nathan leaned forward, his lawyer face on. "Carol, we've looked at your finances. Frank's life insurance and pension are substantial, but they won't last forever, especially with rising healthcare costs. You're 71 now, and statistically speaking." "Are you calculating how long I have to live, Nathan?" I interrupted, a rare flash of anger breaking through my usually calm demeanor. Rebecca reached across the table to pat my hand, a gesture that felt more condescending than comforting. "Mom, we're just being practical. This house has a lot of equity that could be better used to secure your future. And honestly, the stairs are getting steeper every year. What happens if you fall?" I looked between them, realization dawning. "You want me to sell my home?" "Not exactly," Rebecca said, her tone softening into something almost sincere. "We want you to let us buy it from you." I blinked in surprise. "Buy it?" Nathan nodded. "We'd give you fair market value, of course. Our family needs more space. Olivia will be a teenager soon, and she needs her privacy. James wants a proper yard for soccer practice, and this neighborhood has the best school district." "But where would I go?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. Rebecca smiled brightly. "That's the beauty of it. The basement apartment Dad finished before he got sick is perfect. It has its own entrance, a kitchenette, and that nice full bathroom he installed. You'd have your independence, but we'd be right upstairs if you needed anything." I sat back in my chair, momentarily speechless. They wanted to relegate me to the basement of my own home, the basement apartment Frank had envisioned as a space for guests, or perhaps to rent out for extra income in our retirement, not as a place to stash his widow. "We've already spoken to a contractor about adding better lighting and handrails," Nathan added, as if this thoughtful accommodation should fill me with gratitude. I looked across the yard at my rose garden, at the kitchen window where Frank and I had stood side by side washing dishes for decades, at the oak tree he'd planted when Rebecca was born 42 years ago. This was my home, filled with memories that saturated every corner, and they wanted me to surrender it all, to become a tenant in my own basement while they took over the spaces that held my life's story. "I'll need some time to think about it," I said finally, reaching for the pitcher to refill everyone's glasses, my hands remarkably steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. Rebecca didn't hide her disappointment well. "Mom, we'd hoped to move forward quickly. The market is hot right now, and the timing would be perfect with the kids changing schools in the fall." I met my daughter's eyes, searching for the compassionate child I'd raised. The girl who once made me handmade Mother's Day cards, promising to take care of me when I was old. Somewhere along the way, that girl had been replaced by this stranger, who saw me as an inconvenience, an obstacle to her desired lifestyle. "I said I'll think about it," I repeated, my voice firmer. Nathan opened his mouth to press the issue, but Rebecca placed a warning hand on his arm. She knew me well enough to recognize when I wouldn't be pushed. The rest of the afternoon passed in strained politeness. We ate the brownies James had been looking forward to, and I listened to Olivia's reluctant update on her dance recitals. When they finally loaded back into their SUV, Rebecca hugged me with artificial enthusiasm. "Just think how nice it will be not to worry about all this upkeep," she whispered in my ear. "We'll take good care of the place, I promise." As I waved goodbye from the porch, watching the car disappear down the street, I didn't yet know how radically my life was about to change. I didn't know that in less than a year, I would indeed sell this house, but not to Rebecca and Nathan. I didn't know that I was standing at the edge of a painful awakening that would force me to see my daughter for who she truly was, and myself for who I could become. What I did know standing alone on that porch with the evening shadows lengthening around me, was that something fundamental had shifted. The request had revealed a truth I'd been avoiding. In Rebecca's eyes, I was already diminished, already less than. And for the first time since Frank died, I felt a spark of rebellion ignite within me. I turned and walked back into my house, and closed the door firmly behind me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I didn't give Rebecca an answer that weekend, and her patience quickly began to fray. The calls started the very next morning, casual check-ins that inevitably circled back to, "Have you thought more about our offer?" After the third such call in a week, I began letting them go to voicemail. I needed space to think, to process what felt like a fundamental betrayal from my only child. But Rebecca had never been one to accept silence as an answer. By mid-June, I noticed a troubling pattern emerging. My friends from church started asking odd questions about my health, my memory, whether I was managing okay on my own. Linda Thompson, who'd been my friend for over 20 years, actually asked if I'd considered moving into Sunny Pines, the assisted living facility on the outskirts of town. "Why would I do that?" I asked, genuinely confused as we sat in her sunroom after our weekly garden club meeting. "I'm in perfect health. I still drive, I tend my garden, I volunteer at the library twice a week." Linda looked uncomfortable, stirring, her tea longer than necessary. "It's just, Rebecca mentioned you've been having some difficulties. Said you sometimes forget important conversations, that she's found the stove left on more than once." The spoon in my hand clattered against the saucer. She said, "What?" "Oh, Carol, don't be upset. She's just concerned about you. All children worry about their aging parents." But I wasn't aging in the way Rebecca was insinuating. Yes, I occasionally misplaced my reading glasses or forgot where I'd parked at the grocery store. Who doesn't? There had been exactly one incident, with the stove, months ago, when a phone call from my sister in Arizona had distracted me. Rebecca had happened to stop by and made an enormous fuss about it, though nothing had actually happened. That night, I made a list of everyone who had subtly questioned my competence in recent weeks. My neighbor Tom Miller had offered to start checking on me daily, now that things were getting harder. My doctor's receptionist had asked if I wanted to add Rebecca to my HIPAA form, just in case. Even Pastor Wilson had gently suggested I might want to step down from heading the church rummage sale committee to give others a chance to serve, a position I'd held efficiently for the past decade. The picture forming was both clear and disturbing. Rebecca was laying groundwork. She was creating a narrative of my decline that would justify her swooping in to rescue me by taking my home and relegating me to the basement. The next morning, I called my sister Elaine, the one person I knew would give me unvarnished truth. "Carol, Ann Winters," she said when she picked up, her Arizona accent having grown stronger over the decades she'd lived there. "I was just about to call you." "Let me guess," I said, settling into my favorite armchair by the window. "Rebecca called you." There was a telling pause. "How did you know?" "What did she say, Elaine? And please don't sugarcoat it." My sister sighed heavily. "She's worried sick about you, Carol. Says you're becoming forgetful, that you're not taking care of yourself or the house properly. She mentioned finding expired food in your refrigerator and that you forgot her birthday last month." I gripped the phone tighter. "I sent her a card and a check for her birthday. I have the canceled check to prove it. And the expired food was a single container of yogurt that was 1 day past the date. She was snooping in my refrigerator when she stopped by unannounced." "That's what I figured," Elaine said, her voice warming with familiar sisterly loyalty. "You've never missed a birthday in your life. So what's really going on?" I filled her in on Rebecca and Nathan's proposal, my voice occasionally catching as I described how they wanted to buy my house and move me into the basement. "The basement?" Elaine repeated, indignation clear in her voice. Frank's man cave. That he converted? The one with those tiny windows near the ceiling? That's where they want to put you? It's been fixed up nicely, I admitted, trying to be fair. Frank did a good job with the renovation before he got sick. But it's still a basement, Elaine. It's still putting me quite literally beneath them. And this campaign to make everyone think you're losing your marbles, that's to pressure you into agreeing? I think so, I said quietly. Or worse, to lay the groundwork for taking control if I refuse. Have you talked to a lawyer? Elaine asked, her practical nature coming to the fore. I hadn't, but her question sparked something in me. I'd been reacting defensively, hurt by Rebecca's behavior. But maybe it was time to be proactive. I will, I promised. And Elaine, thank you for believing me. Always have, always will, she replied simply. That afternoon, I made an appointment with Martin Hayes, the attorney who had handled Frank's estate. Then I drove to the bank and requested complete records of all my accounts for the past year. I wasn't going to let Rebecca paint me as incompetent without evidence to the contrary. As I pulled into my driveway after running these errands, I was surprised to see Nathan's car parked in front of my house. I hadn't been answering Rebecca's calls, so apparently they'd decided to ambush me in person. They were sitting on my front porch, Rebecca pacing while Nathan sat stiffly in one of the wicker chairs. Both looked up sharply when my car appeared. "Mom," Rebecca called, rushing down the steps as I emerged from my car. "Where have you been? We've been worried sick. You haven't been answering your phone." Her concern might have seemed genuine to an outsider, but I caught the performative quality of it. How her voice was pitched slightly louder than necessary. How her eyes darted to Nathan as if to make sure he was witnessing her daughterly concern. "I've been running errands," I replied calmly, retrieving my purse from the passenger seat. I didn't realize I needed to report my whereabouts. "Of course you don't," Nathan said smoothly, rising to join us. "But when someone doesn't answer calls, for days, it's natural to worry." I looked between them, these two people who claimed to care about my welfare while simultaneously undermining my autonomy. In that moment, I made a decision. I would play along. For now. "I'm sorry if I worried you," I said, injecting a slight quaver into my voice that wasn't entirely feigned. This situation was genuinely upsetting me. I've had a lot on my mind lately. Rebecca's expression softened with what looked like relief. She probably thought I was finally ready to capitulate. "That's understandable, Mom. There's so much to thee. Consider with the house and everything." "Yes," I agreed, moving toward the front door. "Would you like to come in for some iced tea? We can talk about it." They followed me inside eagerly. As I prepared the drinks in the kitchen, I could hear them whispering in the living room, probably strategizing how to close the deal now that I seemed more receptive. I returned with a tray, setting it on the coffee table before taking my seat in Frank's old recliner. It still held the shape of him somehow, and sitting in it always made me feel stronger. "I've been thinking about your offer," I began, watching as they leaned forward expectantly. "And you're right that this house is probably too big for just me." Rebecca couldn't hide her smile. "I'm so glad you're being sensible about this, Mom." I nodded, taking a slow sip of my tea. "I'd like to see the formal offer you have in mind, on paper, with all the details spelled out." Nathan shifted, looking slightly less comfortable. "We were thinking of keeping it simple, Carol. A family transaction. Even family transactions should be properly documented, don't you think? Especially when they involve my largest asset." Rebecca and Nathan exchanged glances. "Of course," Nathan said finally. "I'll draw something up this week. And I'd like to have Martin Hayes look it over," I added, mentioning my attorney deliberately. The flash of annoyance that crossed Nathan's face was quickly masked. "That's unnecessary, Carol. I'm a lawyer. I can ensure everything is fair." "I'm sure you can," I said pleasantly. "But Frank always said it's best to have your own representation in financial matters. I'm just following his advice." The atmosphere in the room had shifted subtly. My apparent agreement to consider their offer had mollified them, but my insistence on proper documentation and legal review clearly wasn't part of their plan. As they left an hour later, Rebecca hugged me tightly. "This is the right decision, Mom. You'll see. We're going to take such good care of you." I smiled and waved as they drove away, but as soon as they were out of sight, I picked up my phone and called Martin Hayes' office to move my appointment up. The clock was ticking, and I needed to act before Rebecca's whispered campaign gained any more momentum. Martin Hayes' office hadn't changed in the 3 years since Frank's passing. The same leather-bound law books lined the shelves, the same slightly faded oriental rug covered the hardwood floor, and the same scent of lemon polish hung in the air. There was something comforting about the consistency, a rare constant in my increasingly unsettled life. Martin himself looked older, don't we all? But his sharp blue eyes were as keen as ever as he reviewed the notes I'd brought him. "So let me make sure I understand correctly, Carol," he said, removing his reading glasses and placing them carefully on his desk. "Rebecca and Nathan want to purchase your home at fair market value, move you into the basement apartment, and you believe Rebecca is systematically attempting to create the impression that you're experiencing cognitive decline?" "That's exactly it," I confirmed, grateful for his matter-of-fact approach. "I have no intention of selling my home to them, but I'm concerned about what Rebecca might do next if I refuse outright." Martin leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Your concern is valid. I've seen similar situations where children, sometimes with the best of intentions, overstep boundaries dramatically. The fact that Nathan is an attorney himself adds another layer of complexity." "What are my options?" "Several," he said, leaning forward again. "First, let me assure you that legally, Rebecca has no claim to your home. You're not incapacitated, you're not incompetent, and there's no legitimate basis for any kind of guardianship proceeding against you." I felt a knot of tension I hadn't even realized was there begin to loosen in my chest. "However," Martin continued, "these situations can become messy, especially within families. My advice would be to take proactive steps to protect yourself and your autonomy." Over the next hour, we outlined a comprehensive plan. I would undergo a complete medical examination documenting my physical and cognitive health. I would meet with a financial advisor to review and potentially restructure my assets. I would update my will and other estate planning documents to reflect my current wishes. "And what about the house?" I asked finally. Martin tapped his pen thoughtfully against his legal pad. "That depends on what you want, Carol. If you genuinely wish to stay there, we can certainly work to ensure that happens. But if you're open to moving, on your terms, not Rebecca's, there might be advantages to selling the property yourself and using the proceeds as you see fit." I hadn't seriously considered selling until that moment. The house had been my home for 30 years, the place where I'd raised my daughter, loved my husband, built my life. But sitting in Martin's office, I suddenly saw it through fresh eyes, not just as the repository of treasured memories, but as an asset that could fund whatever next chapter I chose to write. "I need to think about that," I said honestly. Martin nodded. "Of course. There's no rush to decide everything today. The important thing is that we're putting safeguards in place to protect your interests and your independence." As I drove home, my mind was racing with possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider before. What if I did sell the house? Not to Rebecca and Nathan, but on the open market. I could find a lovely single-level home, perhaps in that new development near the lake that my friend Janet had moved to last year. Or I could even consider moving to Arizona to be closer to Elaine. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Was so lost in these thoughts that I almost missed the unfamiliar car parked in my driveway as I pulled up to my house. It wasn't Nathan's sleek sedan or Rebecca's SUV. This was an older model Toyota I didn't recognize. Cautiously, I approached my front door, which I was certain I had locked when I left. It was now slightly ajar. "Hello," I called, pushing the door open wider. "Who's there?" Rebecca emerged from the kitchen looking startled. "Mom, you're back earlier than I expected. What are you doing in my house? And whose car is that in the driveway?" Before she could answer, a middle-aged woman in scrubs appeared behind her. "Mrs. Winters? I'm Denise Baker from Home Health Assistance. Your daughter contacted us about providing some in-home support for you." I stared at the woman, then at my daughter, fury building inside me like a summer storm. "I didn't request any home health assistance." Rebecca stepped forward, her expression a practiced blend of concern and determination. "Mom, after our talk yesterday, I realized we need to get you some help right away before we finalize the house arrangements. Denise is here to assess what level of care you might need." "I don't need any care," I said firmly, turning to the woman in scrubs. "I'm sorry you were brought here under false pretenses, Ms. Baker, but I'm perfectly capable of caring for myself, and I did not authorize this assessment." The woman looked uncomfortable, glancing between Rebecca and me. "I understand. Perhaps there's been a miscommunication. I'll wait in my car while you two sort this out." She made a hasty exit, clearly sensing the tension in the air. Once we were alone, I turned to Rebecca, no longer bothering to hide my anger. "How dare you? How dare you enter my home without permission and arrange for a stranger to evaluate me, as if I were an invalid?" Rebecca's face hardened. "Someone had to take action, Mom. You say you're fine, but you're clearly not thinking clearly about your future. Dad would have wanted me to look out for you." The mention of Frank was the final straw. "Don't you dare use your father to justify this invasion. Frank respected me as an equal partner in our marriage and an independent person. Something you seem incapable of doing. I'm trying to help you." Rebecca's voice rose, her composure slipping. "Why can't you see that? This isn't help, Rebecca. This is control, and I won't stand for it." I walked to the front door and held it open. "I think you should leave now." "Mom, now, Rebecca. And don't come back until you're ready to treat me with the respect I deserve." For a moment, I thought she might argue further, but something in my expression must have told her I was deadly serious. She gathered her purse and stalked toward the door. "This isn't over," she said as she passed me. "You're only proving my point by behaving irrationally." "Protecting my boundaries is not irrational," I replied calmly. "Goodbye, Rebecca." After she left, I systematically checked every room in the house, wondering what else she might have done while I was gone. In my bedroom, dresser drawers were slightly ajar. In the kitchen, cabinet doors weren't fully closed. She had been searching for something. Evidence of my supposed decline, perhaps, or financial documents she could use against me. I sat heavily at the kitchen table, the full weight of the situation crashing down on me. My own daughter had essentially broken into my home to gather ammunition against me. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. With shaking hands, I called the locksmith and arranged to have all the locks changed immediately. Then I called Elaine. "She brought someone to evaluate me, Elaine," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. Like I'm some senile old woman who can't be trusted to know her own mind. "That's it," my sister declared, her voice fierce with protective anger. "I'm coming to stay with you for a while. I'll book a flight for tomorrow." Part of me wanted to protest that I could handle this alone, but the truth was, I needed the support. "Thank you," I whispered. After hanging up, I made one more call, to Martin Hayes. I left a message with his secretary. "Tell Martin I've made my decision. I want to sell the house." That evening, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The garden Frank had loved so much was in full summer bloom, roses climbing the trellis he'd built with his own hands, petunias spilling from clay pots along the edge of the patio. I would miss this place, these tangible connections to the life I'd shared with Frank. but perhaps it was time to stop living in the past, surrounded by memories that were beginning to feel like anchors rather than comforts. A home should be a sanctuary, not a battleground. And somewhere out there was a new sanctuary waiting for me, one that Rebecca couldn't claim, couldn't invade, couldn't try to take from me. As darkness fell, I made myself a cup of tea and began to make lists. What to keep, what to donate, what to sell. With each item I wrote down, I felt a little lighter, a little freer. By the time I went to bed, the path forward was beginning to take shape in my mind, and it looked nothing like the basement apartment my daughter had planned for me. The locksmith was just finishing up when Elaine's taxi pulled into the driveway the next afternoon. My sister has always been a force of nature. 5 years younger than me, perpetually tanned from the Arizona sun, with a no-nonsense attitude that had served her well through 2 divorces and building her own successful interior design business. She stepped out of the cab looking remarkably fresh despite the early flight, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose. Before the driver had even finished unloading her suitcase, Elaine had bounded up the porch steps and wrapped me in a fierce hug. "Your cavalry has arrived," she announced, pulling back to examine my face with a critical eye. "You look tired, Carol." "It's been a difficult few days," I admitted, helping her with one of her bags. "But I'm feeling better now that you're here." The locksmith handed me a set of new keys. "All done, Mrs. Winters. Front door, back door, and garage access. No one's getting in without these keys or breaking a window. Thank you, Jim. Send the invoice to my email." Elaine raised an eyebrow as the man departed. "You weren't kidding about the locks." After finding Rebecca and a home health worker in my house uninvited. No, I wasn't kidding. Inside, Elaine dropped her bags in the guest room and followed me to the kitchen where I'd prepared lunch, a simple spread of chicken salad sandwiches and fresh fruit. As we ate, I filled her in on my meeting with Martin Hayes and my decision to sell the house. "I think it's the right call," Elaine said, reaching for another strawberry. "Not because there's anything wrong with you staying here, but because this house has become a battleground. Rebecca sees it as her inheritance, not your home." "Exactly," I said, relieved that she understood. I thought I'd be sadder about leaving, but I'm starting to find the idea of a fresh start appealing. "So what's the next step?" Martin is drawing up papers to ensure Rebecca can't interfere with the sale. "I've already contacted Patricia Green, she's the top realtor in town, to come by tomorrow for an initial consultation." Elaine looked impressed. "You've been busy." "I've been motivated," I corrected, managing a small smile. We spent the afternoon going through the house room by room, with Elaine taking notes on what repairs or updates might be needed before listing the property. Her designer's eye caught things I might have missed: the outdated light fixtures in the dining room, the cabinet hardware that could use a modern refresh, the spots where Frank's beloved dog had scratched the hardwood years ago. "Nothing major," she assured me as we settled in the living room with glasses of iced tea. "A few cosmetic touches will make a big difference. And honestly, Carol, the bones of this place are solid. Frank always took such good care of everything." I nodded, a familiar pang of grief mixing with pride. Frank had indeed been meticulous about home maintenance, spending weekends on projects large and small to keep our house in perfect condition. It had been one of the many ways he'd shown his love. Rebecca always took that for granted, I said quietly. She never saw the work that went into making this place a home. Elaine reached over to squeeze my hand. "Children rarely do. But that doesn't excuse her behavior now." The doorbell rang as the afternoon light was beginning to fade. Elaine and I exchanged glances. "Rebecca?" she asked. "Possibly. She does have an unfortunate habit of showing up unannounced." Elaine straightened her shoulders. "Well, let's see how. She likes dealing with both of us." But it wasn't Rebecca at the door. It was Tom Miller, my next-door neighbor. looking uncomfortable in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt, as if he were making a formal call. "Carol," he said, removing his baseball cap. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Tom. You remember my sister Elaine?" His eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Of course. Nice to see you again, Elaine. It's been, what, 2 years?" "3," Elaine corrected with a smile. "At Frank's funeral." An awkward silence fell. Tom shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I was wondering if I might have a word with you, Carol. In private?" Elaine raised an eyebrow but retreated to the kitchen without comment. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. "What can I do for you, Tom?" He twisted his cap in his hands. "I owe you an apology, Carol. Rebecca came by last week. Very upset. Said you were having memory problems, that you'd left the stove on multiple times, that she was worried about your safety. Asked if I'd keep an eye on you, maybe check in daily." He looked genuinely distressed. "I should have come directly to you instead of agreeing." A dull anger pulsed through me, but it wasn't directed at Tom. "You were trying to be helpful. I understand. No, it wasn't right. And after I thought about it, none of it made sense. I've lived next to you for 15 years. We talk over the fence almost every day. I've never seen any sign that you're anything but sharp as a tack." I smiled at his phrasing. "I appreciate that, Tom." "There's more," he said, his expression growing more serious. "Yesterday, while you were out, I saw Rebecca and a man I didn't recognize walking around your property, taking pictures of the exterior. They were measuring the shed out back, and the man was making notes." My blood ran cold. "A man? Not her husband, Nathan?" Tom shook his head. "Definitely not Nathan. This guy was older, balding, wore a polo shirt with some company logo on it. I couldn't make it out from my yard, a contractor most likely. So Rebecca was already planning renovations to my home, even though I'd made no commitment to sell it to her. Thank you for telling me, Tom, and for watching out for me." He nodded, seeming relieved. "If you need anything at all, you just call, day or night." After Tom left, I returned to find Elaine leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "I heard everything," she admitted without apology. "These old houses have thin walls, so Rebecca's been recruiting the neighbors for her campaign too? Apparently." I sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly exhausted. I knew she was talking to our friends from church, but I didn't realize she was approaching the neighbors as well. "She's thorough, I'll give her that," Elaine said dryly. "The good news is that people like Tom aren't buying it. They know you too well. But not everyone does. What about acquaintances who don't see me regularly? New staff at my doctor's office? Bank tellers? If Rebecca's been this systematic, there's no telling how far she's spread her story." Elaine's expression hardened. "Then we fight back just as systematically. Starting tomorrow, we go on a counteroffensive." The next day began with breakfast at Molly's Diner, the local gathering spot where half the town stopped for coffee and gossip before work. Elaine insisted we dress for the occasion. "No. Elastic waistbands, Carol. We're making a statement." I chose a stylish blue dress I hadn't worn in months, added a strand of pearls Frank had given me for our 35th anniversary, and swept my silver hair into a neat French twist. Elaine nodded approvingly when I emerged from my bedroom. "Perfect. Elegant, but not trying too hard. You look like a woman with her act completely together." At the diner, we made a point of greeting everyone by name, stopping at various tables to chat briefly. I asked Stan Peterson about his grandson's baseball tournament, remembered that Louise Hawkins had mentioned knee surgery last month, and discussed the upcoming church fundraiser with Pastor Wilson. "You're making quite an impression," Elaine murmured as we finally settled into a booth. I can practically see people mentally comparing the vibrant, engaged woman before them with whatever picture Rebecca has been painting. "I'm not acting," I pointed out, scanning the menu even though I already knew I wanted my usual Denver omelet. This is who I've always been. Exactly. The best defense against Rebecca's lies is simply being yourself, publicly and confidently. After breakfast, we visited my bank, where I made a point of discussing some investment options with the manager, within earshot of several tellers. Then we stopped at the pharmacy, where I picked up my modest prescriptions, blood pressure medication, and a mild anti-inflammatory for occasional arthritis pain, and chatted knowledgeably with the pharmacist about potential interactions with over-the-counter supplements. Our final stop of the morning was Patricia Green's real estate office. Patricia was a formidable woman in her 50s who had dominated the local housing market for over 2 decades. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine but professional. "Carol, it's good to see you again. And this must be your sister?" After introductions, Patricia got straight to business. "I've done some preliminary research on your property. Based on recent sales in your neighborhood and the square footage and condition you described over the phone, I think we're looking at a listing price in the $475,000 to $525,000 range." I nearly choked on my water. "That much?" Patricia nodded, looking slightly amused at my reaction. "The market is exceptionally strong right now, and your neighborhood has become particularly desirable. The school district is excellent, and the proximity to both downtown and the state park makes it appealing to a wide range of buyers." Elaine kicked me gently under the table, her eyes dancing with excitement. Neither of us had expected a number that high. Frank and I had purchased the house for $180,000 30 years ago. Even accounting for inflation, this represented a substantial profit. "When can you come see the property?" I asked, my decision solidifying with each passing minute. "I'm available tomorrow afternoon. After that, we can discuss specific recommendations for preparation, but from what you've described, it sounds like the house is in excellent condition overall." As we left Patricia's office, Elaine linked her arm through mine. "Do you realize what this means, Carol? You'll have more than enough to buy a beautiful new place outright and still have plenty left for whatever else you want to do." The weight that had been pressing on my chest since Rebecca first proposed moving me to the basement seemed to lift slightly. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of excitement about the future. A future I would shape according to my own wishes, not my daughter's. Patricia Green's assessment of my home exceeded even my highest expectations. She walked through each room with professional efficiency, making notes on her tablet while occasionally murmuring approval at Frank's craftsmanship or the home's overall condition. "The hardwood floors are in remarkable shape," she noted as we stood in the living room. "And these built-in bookshelves add tremendous value. Buyers love these character details." By the time we reached the backyard, with its mature oak trees and carefully tended flower beds, Patricia was smiling broadly. "Carol, I'm going to be honest with you. I think my initial estimate was conservative. Given what I'm seeing in the current market, we should list at $545,000. Elaine, who had been following us silently, let out a low whistle. "That's nearly triple what you and Frank paid for it, isn't it?" I nodded, still processing the figure. That kind of money would completely transform my retirement possibilities. I could buy a beautiful new place outright, travel, establish trusts, for my grandchildren's education, all while maintaining my independence. "How quickly can we list it?" I asked. "I'd like to bring in my photographer tomorrow if that works for you," Patricia replied. "We can have professional photos, a virtual tour, and the listing live by early next week." "Perfect," I said decisively. After Patricia left, Elaine and I celebrated with glasses of Frank's favorite Cabernet Sauvignon, which I'd been saving for a special occasion. "To new beginnings," Elaine toasted, raising her glass. "And to Frank," I added quietly. "He worked so hard to build this nest egg for me. For us." Elaine's expression softened. "He'd be proud of you, Carol, standing up for yourself this way." I took a sip of wine, savoring its rich complexity. I just wish Rebecca could understand. This shouldn't be adversarial. I'm her mother, not her enemy. Some lessons are learned the hard way, Elaine said with a sigh. Speaking from experience. We both knew she was referring to her own daughter, Maya, who had gone through a rebellious phase in her 20s that had nearly destroyed their relationship. They'd eventually reconciled, but only after years of painful distance. Maybe this will be Rebecca's wake-up call, I suggested, though without much conviction. Elaine didn't bother with false reassurances. Instead, she refilled our glasses and changed the subject. Have you thought about where you might move? I've been looking at those new condos near Riverside Park, I admitted. Single-level living, beautiful views of the river, and a community of active seniors. No maintenance, no yard work, but still close to everything I love about town. Sounds perfect. It's just so different from what I've known. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too impulsive. Elaine snorted. You? Impulsive? Carol, you've thought more carefully about changing your breakfast cereal than most people do about getting married. Trust me, you're not being impulsive. You're being brave. The doorbell rang before I could respond, its chime slicing through our moment of companionable peace. Elaine and I exchanged knowing glances. $10 says it's Rebecca, she muttered. I sighed and set down my wine glass. No bet. She probably saw Patricia's car here earlier. Sure enough, when I opened the door, Rebecca stood on the porch, her expression a forced mask of cheerfulness. She held a large wicker basket filled with bath products, chocolates, and what appeared to be several scented candles. Mom, I brought you a little care package, she announced, thrusting the basket toward me. I felt terrible about our misunderstanding. The other day, I accepted the basket mechanically, noting that it still had the cellophane wrap and price tag from Gable's department store. Rebecca had always been more likely to throw money at a problem than offer a genuine apology. Thank you, I said neutrally, stepping back to let her in. Your Aunt Elaine is visiting. Rebecca's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Aunt Elaine, what a wonderful surprise. Elaine emerged from the kitchen, wine glass still in hand. Rebecca, how nice to see you. Her tone made it clear it was anything but nice. An uncomfortable silence fell as the three of us moved to the living room. Rebecca's eyes darted around the space, likely looking for evidence of Patricia's visit. I decided to spare us all the pretense. I've decided to sell the house, Rebecca. Her head snapped up, eyes suddenly alert. You have? That's wonderful, Mom. I knew you'd see reason eventually. When can Nathan and I come by with the paperwork? I'm not selling it to you, I clarified, keeping my voice steady. I've engaged Patricia Green to list it on the open market next week. The transformation in Rebecca's demeanor was instantaneous and chilling. Her carefully constructed facade of daughterly concern crumbled, revealing the naked calculation beneath. You can't be serious, she spat. This is our family home. You can't just sell it to strangers. It's my home, I corrected her gently, and I can sell it to whomever I choose. Rebecca turned to Elaine, eyes flashing with accusation. This is your doing, isn't it? You've always been jealous of my relationship with Mom. You've poisoned her against me. Elaine took a deliberate sip of her wine. Your mother made this decision all on her own, Rebecca. I'm just here to support her. Support? Rebecca laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Is that what you call encouraging a woman in her 70s to uproot her entire life, to abandon the home where she raised her family, to throw away decades of memories? The memories come with me, I interjected. The house is just a building. Just a building? Rebecca's voice rose. Is that what Dad would say? That the home he worked his entire life to provide for us is just a building? The mention of Frank sent a spike of anger through me. Don't you dare use your father against me again. Frank would be appalled at how you've been treating me. How I've been treating you? I'm the only one looking out for your best interests. You're not thinking clearly. This real estate agent is taking advantage of you. I stood up, my patience finally exhausted. Rebecca, I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions. Patricia. Green has been a respected realtor in this community for decades. She's provided a fair and actually quite generous assessment of this property's value. A value, I might add, that is significantly higher than whatever lowball offer you and Nathan were planning to make. Rebecca's face reddened. That's not— It is, I interrupted firmly. You never intended to pay me fair market value for this house. You wanted to get it cheaply and relegate me to the basement while you lived in the home I built with your father. And when I didn't immediately agree, you started a whisper campaign to make people think I was becoming incompetent. That's ridiculous, she sputtered, but her eyes slid away from mine. Is it? Should I call Tom Miller to confirm you asked him to check on me daily because I was supposedly leaving the stove on? Or Linda Thompson about how you told her I was forgetting entire conversations? Or Pastor Wilson about how you suggested I might have dementia? Rebecca's silence was confirmation enough. The truly sad thing, I continued, my voice softening despite my anger, is that if you had approached me honestly, if you had treated me with respect and acknowledged my right to make my own choices, I might have considered helping you buy this house. I've always wanted you and the children to be happy. Tears welled in Rebecca's eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from genuine remorse or frustrated anger. You're making a terrible mistake, she said, her voice thick. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is discovering that my daughter values my house more than she values me. Rebecca flinched as if I'd slapped her. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her with such force that the family photos on the entryway wall rattled in their frames. Elaine moved to my side, rapping, an arm around my shoulders. Are you okay? I expected to feel devastated, but instead I felt oddly calm. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I think I needed that confrontation. No more pretending. Everything is out in the open now. She'll be back, Elaine warned. This isn't over. I know, but now I'm prepared. Later that evening, as predicted, my phone began ringing. First Rebecca, then Nathan, then Rebecca again. I let each call go to voicemail. When the house phone started ringing as well, Elaine finally unplugged it with an exasperated sigh. They're persistent. I'll give them that. I was sorting through the bookshelf in the den, deciding which volumes to keep and which to donate, when my cell phone pinged with a text message. From Nathan, not Rebecca. You need to consider what you're doing carefully, Carol. Rebecca is devastated. This house means everything to her. We're prepared to make a formal offer $20,000 above whatever Patricia suggested. Please don't make this situation more difficult than it needs to be. I showed the text to Elaine, who snorted derisively. Translation: We're panicking because we didn't expect you to actually get a proper market assessment, and now we're scrambling to salvage our plan. That's how I read it, too. I agreed, sliding the phone back into my pocket without responding. 20,000 above listing, Elaine mused. They must be truly desperate. It's not about the money, I said, running my fingers over the spine of an old photo album. It's about respect, about being seen as a person with agency, not a problem to be managed or an obstacle to be moved aside. Elaine nodded, understanding perfectly as she always did. So what's next? Tomorrow we finish, preparing the house for the photographer. Then I start looking seriously at those condos by the river. And somewhere in there, I need to meet with Martin again to make sure everything is legally airtight. What about Rebecca and Nathan? I sighed, feeling the weight of maternal love and disappointment in equal measure. I'll give them time to process. Maybe once they realize I'm serious, that the house is really going on the market, they'll come around. Or maybe they won't. Either way, I need to move forward with my life. Later, lying in bed, I found myself mentally walking through each room of the house, saying goodbye to the spaces that had held my life for 3 decades. The kitchen where I'd taught Rebecca to bake, the back porch where Frank and I had watched countless sunsets, the small alcove under the stairs where Rebecca had created a reading nook as a child. But instead of the grief I'd expected, I felt a growing sense of liberation. This house had been a wonderful home, but it had served its purpose. The next chapter of my life was waiting to be written, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited to see what it might hold. The professional photographer, Patricia, captured the house beautifully, sunlight streaming through windows, highlighting the craftsmanship Frank had lovingly maintained throughout our years there. Each room appeared spacious and inviting, the backyard a private oasis. When Patricia sent over the virtual tour link for my approval, even I was impressed by how appealing the property looked. "We'll go live with the listing Monday morning," Patricia informed me over the phone. "Given the current market and the condition of your home, I wouldn't be surprised if we have multiple offers by the end of the week." "That fast?" I asked, still adjusting to how quickly everything was moving. "That fast," she confirmed. "I suggest you be prepared for things to move swiftly once we list. Have you found a place you might want to move to?" "I'm looking at Riverside Meadows tomorrow," I told her, referring to the senior community I'd mentioned to Elaine. "Excellent choice. I sold a unit there last month to the Hendersons. Lovely corner apartment with a balcony overlooking the water." After hanging up, I joined Elaine in the guest room, which she'd converted into a temporary sorting station. Boxes, labeled Keep, Donate, and Decide Later, were arranged in neat rows. "Patricia says the listing goes live Monday," I told her, picking up a crystal vase I'd forgotten we owned. "She thinks we'll have offers by the end of the week." Elaine nodded approvingly. "Which means we need to step up our sorting game. There's 40 years of accumulated stuff in this house." We worked companionably through the afternoon, sorting through drawers and closets, unearthing forgotten treasures and confronting the remarkable amount of clutter one accumulates over decades in the same house. Every so often, an item would trigger a memory. Frank's fishing tackle box, untouched since his final summer. Rebecca's high school yearbooks, the hand-knit baby blanket I'd made for James when he was born. "Do you think Rebecca will want these?" I asked Elaine, holding up a box of her childhood mementos, report cards, art projects, certificates from piano recitals. Elaine considered the question carefully. "Set them aside. When this is all settled, you can offer them to her. But don't use them as a peace offering now. They'll just become another point of manipulation." I knew she was right. Rebecca had demonstrated she would use anything, including my memories and emotional attachments, to get what she wanted. Around 6 that evening, the doorbell rang. Elaine and I exchanged wary glances. "I can get it," she offered. "No," I said firmly. "This is still my house, and I won't hide in my own home." I was braced for Rebecca or Nathan, but instead found my grandson James standing on the porch, backpack slung over one shoulder. His lanky frame seemed to have grown another inch just in the week since I'd last seen him. "James," I exclaimed, genuinely delighted. "What a wonderful surprise." His smile was hesitant, but his hug was fierce and genuine. "Hi, Grandma," I ushered, him inside, noticing he kept glancing back toward the street. "Did someone drop you off?" "Dad did," he admitted. "He's waiting in the car. Wanted to make sure you'd let me in." The implication that I might turn away my own grandson sent a flash of anger through me, but I pushed it aside for James's sake. "Of course I'd let you in. You're always welcome here." In the kitchen, James greeted Elaine with the awkward politeness of a 9-year-old boy, then fidgeted with the zipper of his backpack. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," he blurted suddenly. "Dad said it was okay, but Mom thinks I'm at soccer practice." Elaine raised an eyebrow but remained silent. I pulled out a chair for James and set a glass of lemonade and a plate of chocolate chip cookies in front of him, his favorite since he was a toddler. "What's going on, sweetheart?" I asked gently. James took a deep breath. "I heard Mom and Dad fighting about the house. Dad said Mom went too far, that she shouldn't have tried to trick you, and that she needs to let it go. Mom was crying and saying you were being unfair, that the house was supposed to be hers someday." My heart ached at the thought of James caught in the middle of this conflict. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," he shrugged with the remarkable resilience of children. "It's okay. They fight a lot." He took a cookie but just held it, not eating. "But then I heard Mom say something that made me really mad." "What was that?" His young face hardened with a protectiveness that made him look suddenly older. "She said you were being selfish and ungrateful after everything she's done for you, but that's not true. You're the least selfish person I know." Tears pricked at my eyes. In the midst of all this ugliness, my grandson had seen the truth and had the courage to stand up for it, even against his own mother. "Thank you, James. That means a lot to me." He fidgeted with his cookie, breaking it into smaller and smaller pieces. "Dad said I should talk to you. He said sometimes adults forget what matters, and maybe if you knew how I felt it might help." "And how do you feel?" I asked softly. "I don't want you to move to the basement," he said firmly. "It's dark down there, and the ceiling's too low, and it smells funny." I couldn't help but smile at his straightforward assessment. "I agree with you on all counts. And I don't want you to be mad at Mom forever." His voice grew smaller, more vulnerable. "But I don't want her to be mean to you, either." "I'm not mad at your mom, James," I told him honestly. "I'm disappointed and hurt, but not mad. And I certainly don't want this situation to affect my relationship with you or your sister." He nodded solemnly, finally taking a bite of his cookie. "Dad says you're selling the house to strangers." "I am selling it," I confirmed. "I'm looking at a new place tomorrow, an apartment near the river with a swimming pool and a community center." His eyes widened. "A pool? Can I come visit and swim there?" "Absolutely," I promised. "As often as you want." We chatted for another 20 minutes, with James telling me about his soccer team and a science project on volcanoes. It was the most normal conversation I'd had with any member of my family in weeks, and I treasured every moment of it. When Nathan texted that soccer practice would be ending soon and he needed to pick James up, my grandson hugged me tight before leaving. "I love you, Grandma," he whispered, "even if you don't live in this house anymore." "I love you too, James, always and forever, no matter where I live." After he left, Elaine let out a long breath. "Well, that was unexpected." "Very," I agreed, feeling oddly lighter. "And interesting that Nathan orchestrated it behind Rebecca's back." "It sounds like there might be some discord in paradise," Elaine observed. "Nathan seems to recognize that Rebecca has gone too far." I nodded slowly. "James said they fight a lot. I knew things weren't perfect, but I never realized." "That's because you don't meddle," Elaine pointed out, "unlike some people we could name." The next morning, Nathan called while Elaine and I were having breakfast. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won out. "Carol, it's Nathan. Do you have a moment to talk?" His tone was different than I'd expected, not confrontational or manipulative, but subdued, almost apologetic. "I do," I replied cautiously. "First, I want to thank you for seeing James yesterday. It meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to me, too." He cleared his throat. "I also want to apologize for my role in this situation. Things have gotten out of hand in a way I never intended." I remained silent, waiting. "Rebecca is struggling right now," he continued carefully. "When her father died, it hit her harder than anyone realized. I think hanging onto the house became her way of keeping him close. That doesn't excuse her behavior, but I thought you should know." I hadn't considered this angle before. Rebecca and Frank had always had a special bond. He'd been her steadfast champion, her biggest fan. His death had left a void in all our lives, but perhaps Rebecca's desire for the house was rooted in grief rather than simple entitlement. "I appreciate you telling me this, Nathan." "There's more," he said, his voice taking on a different tone. "Something I think you should know before the house is officially listed." A chill ran through me. "What is it?" "Rebecca contacted a lawyer. Last week, not me, someone from another firm. She was exploring options to contest any sale of the house, possibly by challenging your competency." My hand tightened around the phone. "Is that why she brought that home health worker to evaluate me?" "Yes," Nathan admitted, though I didn't know about it until after the fact. "Carol, I need to be clear. I do not support this approach. It's wrong on every level, and I told her so in no uncertain terms." "Then why are you calling to tell me this?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. "Because I convinced her to drop it, but I don't know how long that will last. I wanted you to be prepared, just in case. And I wanted you to know that if she does pursue this path, she'll be doing it against my wishes and without my support." The call left me shaken. I relayed the conversation to Elaine, who immediately called Martin Hayes to update him on this new development. "Martin says to proceed as planned," she reported after speaking with him. "He's confident that any competency challenge would fail, especially given the medical assessment you've already completed. But he suggests documenting everything. Each interaction with Rebecca, each step you take in selling the house, everything." I nodded, my determination hardening. "If Rebecca wants to take this to court, she'll find I'm more than ready to defend myself." Despite the troubling news, I kept my appointment to tour Riverside Meadows that afternoon. The complex was even more appealing in person than in the brochures. Spacious apartments with modern amenities, beautifully landscaped grounds, and a vibrant community of active seniors. The unit available had a balcony overlooking the river, just as Patricia had mentioned, with enough space for a small container garden. "I'll take it," I told the leasing agent after the tour, surprising even myself with my certainty. As we signed the holding agreement, I felt a curious sense of destiny, as if this new chapter had been waiting for me all along. The road to get here had been painful, but the destination felt right. When Elaine and I returned home, a small package sat on the front porch. Inside was a hand-drawn card from James showing a stick-figure grandmother in what appeared to be a swimming pool, with the message, "I can't wait to visit," scrawled in his uneven handwriting. Tucked alongside it was a note from Nathan. "Whatever happens, James and Olivia will always need their grandmother. I'll make sure they never lose that connection." I clutched the items to my chest, tears flowing. Freely for the first time since this ordeal began. Not tears of sadness or anger, but of profound relief. Even as some family bonds were being tested, others were revealing unexpected strength. And in that moment, I knew I would be all right, whatever came next. Monday morning arrived with a sense of finality. As promised, Patricia Green listed my house on the real estate market at 9 a.m. sharp. By noon, she'd called to inform me that she already had 6 showing requests for that afternoon and the following day. "This is exactly what I expected," she said, her voice brimming with professional satisfaction. "Your home is in an ideal location, it's beautifully maintained, and it's priced competitively. I wouldn't be surprised if we have multiple offers by Wednesday." The reality of the situation hit me as I hung up the phone. In possibly less than a week, I would accept an offer on the home that had sheltered me for 3 decades. The place, where Frank and I had built our life together, where Rebecca had grown up, where countless holiday meals and family gatherings had unfolded. Part of me still couldn't quite believe I was doing this. "Having second thoughts?" Elaine asked, reading my expression as she walked into the kitchen. "Not second thoughts exactly," I clarified. "More like acknowledging the magnitude of this change. She nodded in understanding. It would be strange if you didn't feel something. This has been your home for a long time. We spent the afternoon at Riverside Meadows, finalizing paperwork for my new apartment and meeting with an interior designer who worked exclusively with the community's residents. The designer, a stylish woman in her 50s named Jillian, helped me plan how my existing furniture might fit into the new space and what new pieces I might need. "This is your chance to reimagine your surroundings," she said enthusiastically. "Many of our residents find it quite liberating to create a home that reflects who they are now, not just an accumulation of the past." Her words struck a chord. I'd been thinking of this move primarily in terms of what I was leaving behind, not what I might be moving toward. The possibility of creating a fresh space, one that honored my past but wasn't dominated by it, was unexpectedly appealing. When we returned home, I found my neighbor Tom Miller waiting on my porch, looking troubled. "Rebecca was here," he said without preamble. "She seemed pretty upset that the house was officially listed. She was sitting in her car across the street when I got home from my shift, just staring at your house." "Did she approach you?" I asked, concerned. He shook his head. "No, but she was on the phone, talking loudly enough that I could hear snippets. Something about incompetence and emergency measures. When she saw me watching, she drove off." A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Despite Nathan's assurances, it seemed Rebecca might still be planning to challenge my competency. I thanked Tom for the warning and immediately called Martin Hayes to update him. "Document everything," he advised, echoing his earlier guidance. "If she does file anything, we'll be ready. In the meantime, the best thing you can do is proceed, normally with the house sale." That evening, after a quiet dinner with Elaine, I decided to tackle Frank's study, the one room I'd been avoiding in our packing and sorting. It remained largely as he'd left it, with his collection of nautical books lining the shelves, his antique ship's compass on the desk, and his reading glasses still perched atop the last novel he'd been reading before his final hospital stay. Elaine offered to help, but this was a task I needed to face alone. "I'll be in the living room if you need me," she said, squeezing my shoulder gently before leaving me to my memories. I started with the desk, methodically working through each drawer. In the bottom right drawer, beneath a stack of file folders, I discovered a sealed envelope with my name written on it in Frank's distinctive handwriting. My heart raced as I carefully opened it. Inside was a letter dated just 3 weeks before his death, when he must have known his time was growing short. "My dearest Carol, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I hope some time has passed, that the sharpest edges of grief have softened a little. There are things I need to tell you that I couldn't bring myself to say aloud. First, know that loving you has been the greatest joy of my life. Your strength, kindness, and quiet wisdom have made me a better man than I would have been without you. Every day with you was a gift, even the difficult ones. Second, I need to apologize. I've kept something from you that I should have shared long ago. Rebecca came to me about 5 years ago with concerns about our will and the eventual disposition of our home. She was quite forceful about wanting assurances that the house would come to her after we were both gone. I told her that our assets were divided equally in our wills, but she pressed for more specific guarantees regarding the house itself. She spoke of her plans to eventually move her family in, renovate certain areas, and create her vision of a legacy home for future generations. I didn't tell you about this conversation because I didn't want to hurt you. Rebecca made it clear she saw the house as already partially hers, as her inheritance, rather than as our home where we were still actively living. There was something in her attitude that troubled me deeply, an entitlement that seemed to dismiss us as already peripheral to her future plans. I'm telling you this now because I want you to be prepared. I fear that after I'm gone, Rebecca may increase pressure on you regarding the house. She may try to influence your decisions or make you feel obligated to accommodate her wishes above your own needs and desires. Carol, please remember this. You owe her nothing. The home we built together is yours to do with as you see fit. Stay in it for as long as it brings you joy. Sell it when and if that feels right to you. Move somewhere new if adventure calls. The only person who should determine your future is you. I've spoken with Martin about adding extra provisions to our will to ensure your complete autonomy over all assets. He understands my concerns and has adjusted the documentation accordingly. Finally, know that whatever you decide, I support you completely. Your happiness was always my primary concern in life, and that doesn't change with my passing. All my love, always. Frank, I read the letter 3 times, tears flowing freely down my face. Even from beyond the grave, Frank was still looking out. For me, still supporting me. He had seen what I couldn't, or wouldn't, see about our daughter's attitude toward our home, and he had tried to protect me from it in his own way. Carol? Elaine called from the doorway, concern evident in her voice. Are you all right? You've been in here for over an hour. Wordlessly, I handed her the letter. She read it carefully, her expression shifting from worry to understanding. Oh, Carol, she said softly when she finished. Frank knew. He knew, I agreed, wiping away tears. And he wanted me to know that whatever decision I made would have his blessing. Does this change anything for you? She asked. I considered the question seriously. It confirms I'm doing the right thing. But it also makes me sad that Rebecca's attitude about the house was troubling Frank even before he got sick. He carried that worry along with everything else. Frank was a perceptive man, Elaine observed. He saw Rebecca clearly. Clearer than I did, I admitted. I've always made excuses for her behavior, tried to see the best in her intentions. That's what mothers do, Elaine said gently. We want to believe the best about our children. The following morning, Patricia called with news that exceeded even her optimistic predictions. After just 1 day on the market and a handful of showings, we had already received 2 offers above asking price. This is extraordinary, she exclaimed. The Henderson family has offered $560,000, and the Chens have countered with $575,000. Both are pre-approved for financing, and both want a quick closing. That's $30,000 over the listing price, I said, stunned. Are they that desperate? It's not desperation, it's recognition of value, Patricia corrected. Your home is exceptional, and the market is extremely competitive right now. I expect we may receive even higher offers before the end of the day. She was right. By that afternoon, a 3rd offer came in at $585,000 from a couple relocating from Chicago for work. All 3 potential buyers were willing to accommodate my timeline. For moving out, we should respond tomorrow, Patricia advised. Give the market 1 more day to see if any additional offers materialize. I had just hung up when the doorbell rang. Elaine answered it, and I heard a familiar voice that made my stomach clench. Rebecca. I need to speak with my mother. She was saying, her tone clipped and formal. Elaine didn't budge from the doorway. Carol's had a long day. If you want to talk, you can call first like a reasonable person, instead of just showing up. This is still my mother's house, and I'm still her daughter, Rebecca replied coldly. You're just a visitor. A visitor who was invited, Elaine shot back. I intervened before things could escalate further. It's all right, Elaine. I'll speak. With Rebecca. My sister reluctantly stepped aside, giving Rebecca a warning look as she passed. Rebecca entered the living room, still wearing her work clothes, a tailored blazer and pencil skirt that somehow made her seem more like a business adversary than my daughter. I see the for sale sign is up, she said without preamble. So you're really going through with this? Yes, I confirmed simply. We've already received multiple offers. Something flickered across her face. Alarm, perhaps. Already? The listing? Only went up yesterday. It's a seller's market, I explained, keeping my tone neutral. Patricia says we'll likely accept an offer tomorrow. Rebecca paced the room, running a hand through her hair in a gesture reminiscent of her father when he was stressed. This is happening too fast. You need more time to consider all the implications. I've had plenty of time to think about this. Decision, Rebecca. She stopped pacing and faced me directly. Mom, please, don't do this. This house is part of our family history. It's where Dad lived. How can you just sell it to strangers? The mention of Frank reminded me of his letter, safely tucked away in my bedside drawer. I wondered briefly if I should tell Rebecca about it, but something held me back. The letter had been meant for me. Frank's final private words of support and advice. Your father would understand, I said instead. He always believed in doing what makes you happy, not what others expect of you. Rebecca's expression hardened. That's convenient, isn't it? Dad's not here to say what he would or wouldn't approve of. The cruel irony of her statement, given Frank's explicit support in his letter, might have made me laugh if it weren't. So painful. Rebecca, I said with quiet firmness. I've made my decision. The house is being sold. I've already put a deposit on an apartment at Riverside Meadows, and I'm looking forward to my new home. Riverside Meadows? She scoffed. That glorified nursing home? You'll be surrounded by old people playing bingo and complaining about their medications. I felt a flash of anger, but kept my voice steady. That glorified nursing home has a state-of-the-art fitness center, cultural excursions, continuing education classes, and residents who are active, engaged people my age. It's exactly where I want to be at this point in my life. Rebecca opened her mouth to argue further, but I held up my hand to stop her. I didn't invite you here today, but since you've come, I do have something to say. I found a letter from your father yesterday, written shortly before he died. Her eyes widened slightly. A letter? What did it say? It was personal, I replied. But the essence was that he wanted me to make my own choices about my future, including what to do with this house. He explicitly supported whatever decision would make me happy. I don't believe you, she said instantly. Dad would never want you to sell our family home. I simply looked at her, too tired to argue anymore. Believe what you want, Rebecca. But the house is being sold, and I'm moving to Riverside Meadows. Those decisions are final. She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse from the sofa where she'd dropped it. This isn't over, she warned as she headed for the door. You're making a terrible mistake, and somehow I need to make you see that. After she left, Elaine emerged from the kitchen where she'd clearly been listening to our conversation. Well, she said dryly, that went about as well as could be expected. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. I don't understand her, Elaine. Why can't she just accept my decision and move on? Because this isn't really about the house, my sister replied, sitting beside me. It's about control. It's about her vision of the future being disrupted. And maybe, deep down, it's about her fear of losing the last tangible connection to her father. I considered this possibility, trying once again to see the situation through Rebecca's eyes. Do you think I'm being too harsh with her? Elaine shook her head firmly. No, you're setting necessary boundaries. Rebecca needs to understand that you're a person with your own needs and desires, not just a repository for her memories or a caretaker for her inheritance. As the sun set outside the windows that had framed so many evenings of my life, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and anticipation. One chapter was ending, yes, but another was beginning. One that I was writing for myself, with Frank's blessing and my sister's support. Whatever Rebecca might do next, I was ready to face it with the quiet strength Frank had always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. Wednesday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect late spring day. From my bedroom window, I could see the for sale sign on the front lawn, a tangible symbol of the change sweeping through my life. Part of me still couldn't quite believe how quickly everything was happening. Patricia called at precisely 10 a.m., as promised. "Carol, we now have 5 offers on the table," she reported, professional excitement evident in her voice. "The highest is from the Chens at $592,000. They're offering an all-cash deal with a flexible closing date to accommodate your timeline." $592,000, I repeated, the figure seeming almost unreal. That's nearly $50,000 over asking price. "The market is extraordinary right now," Patricia confirmed. "And your home is exceptional. I recommend we accept the Chen's offer today. Cash deals of this caliber don't come along often, and they've agreed to all our terms." After discussing a few more details, I agreed. Patricia promised to handle the paperwork immediately and have it ready for my signature that afternoon. I'd just hung up when Elaine appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "Good news? We have a buyer," I told her, still processing the reality of it. "The Chens are offering $592,000 in cash." Elaine whistled. Frank would be impressed. He always said real estate was the best investment. The mention of Frank reminded me of his letter, and I felt a renewed sense of peace about my decision. He would have approved not just of the practical financial aspects, but of my choice to move forward on my own terms. "I should tell Rebecca before she hears it from someone else," I said, reaching for my phone. Elaine looked skeptical. "After yesterday's confrontation? Are you sure that's wise?" "Probably not," I admitted. "But she's still my daughter. I need to at least try to handle this with grace." Rebecca didn't answer when I called, so I left a simple voicemail. "Rebecca, we've accepted an offer on the house. I wanted you to hear it from me directly. Please call if you'd like to talk." Elaine and I spent the morning at Riverside Meadows, measuring the apartment and finalizing details with Jillian, the designer. The more time I spent there, the more I could envision myself living happily in the space. The apartment's open floor plan and abundant natural light created a sense of spaciousness that appealed to me, and the community's amenities, particularly the garden terrace where residents could maintain small plots, seemed tailor-made for my interests. "You're going to thrive here," Elaine observed as we walked through the community center with its library, classrooms, and art studio. "It's perfect for you." I had to agree. For the first time since Frank's death, I felt a genuine sense of anticipation about the future, not just acceptance, but actual excitement. We stopped for lunch at a small cafe overlooking the river. As we waited for our food, I caught sight of a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Linda Thompson, my friend from church, who had been one of the first to repeat Rebecca's concerns about my supposed forgetfulness. Linda spotted me immediately, hesitating before approaching our table with an uncertain smile. "Carol, and Elaine too. What a lovely surprise." "Hello, Linda," I replied, gesturing to an empty chair. "Would you like to join us?" She glanced around as if checking for other options before sitting down. "Just for a moment. I'm meeting my sister, but she's running late." An awkward silence fell, which Linda finally broke. "I heard your house is on the market. That was sudden." "Not really," I countered calmly. "I've been considering my options for some time now." Linda fidgeted with her napkin. "Rebecca seemed quite surprised when I mentioned seeing the listing. She said you hadn't discussed it with the family." Of course, Rebecca would be spreading that narrative. "Rebecca has been well aware of my plans," I said firmly. "We simply disagree about what's best for me at this stage of my life." "I see," Linda murmured, though her expression suggested she didn't see it all. "It's just that she's been so concerned about you lately. She mentioned you've been acting differently." Elaine set down her water glass with slightly more force than necessary. "Differently how exactly?" Linda looked uncomfortable under my sister's direct gaze. "Well, making impulsive decisions, forgetting important conversations, that sort of thing." "Interesting," I said, keeping my voice level. Did Rebecca happen to mention that I've recently undergone a complete medical examination that confirmed I'm in excellent cognitive health? Or that I've been working with both a financial advisor and an attorney to ensure all my affairs are in order? No, Linda admitted, her cheeks flushing slightly. She didn't mention that. I'm sure it slipped her mind, Elaine remarked dryly. Linda appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Well, I should find my sister. Lovely to see you both. She stood quickly, nearly knocking over her water glass in her haste to escape. After she left, Elaine shook her head in disgust. The nerve, still parroting Rebecca's lies even after all this time. She's confused, I said, more charitably than I felt. Rebecca has been very convincing. Speaking of Rebecca, Elaine said, nodding toward the entrance. Isn't that Nathan? I turned to see my son-in-law entering the cafe, accompanied by James. Neither had seen us yet as they were led to a table on the opposite side of the restaurant. Should we say hello? I wondered aloud. Absolutely, Elaine decided. Let's see what the men of the family have to say about recent developments. We made our way across the restaurant. James spotted us first, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. Grandma! Aunt Elaine! He jumped up to hug me, then Elaine. What are you doing here? Having lunch, I explained, smiling at his enthusiasm. And you? Dad's taking me to the Science Museum after lunch, he reported excitedly. They have a new dinosaur exhibit. Nathan stood, his expression guarded but not hostile. Carol, Elaine, nice to see you both. He gestured to the empty chairs at their table. Would you like to join us? We just ordered. I looked to Elaine, who shrugged. Our food should be coming soon. Why don't you join us instead? Our table has the better view of the river. To my surprise, Nathan agreed readily. Once we were all settled at our table, an awkward silence descended, broken only by James's cheerful chatter about dinosaurs and his upcoming science test. Eventually, Nathan cleared his throat. I heard you accepted an offer on the house. News travels fast, I observed. Patricia Green's assistant called Rebecca to confirm some details about the closing process, he explained. She didn't take it well. I tried to call her this morning, I told him. She didn't pick up. Nathan sighed, glancing at James to ensure he was absorbed in the children's menu activities and not listening too closely. She's taking this very personally, Carol, as if your decision to sell is somehow a rejection of her. It's not about Rebecca at all, I said quietly. It's about what's right for me at this point in my life. I understand that, Nathan assured. Me. But Rebecca. She's always had a certain image of how things should be. The family home passing down through generations, Sunday dinners in the same dining room where she grew up, her children inheriting the same spaces she cherished. Those are lovely sentiments, I acknowledged. But they can't take precedence over my actual needs and wishes. I'm not a caretaker for Rebecca's nostalgic vision. I'm a person with my own life to live. Nathan nodded slowly. I've been trying to help her see that, without much success, I'm afraid. Elaine, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Has Rebecca mentioned her plans to challenge Carol's competency? Nathan's expression turned grim. She discussed it. I made it very clear that I wouldn't support such an action, professionally or personally. I thought she'd abandoned the idea. Your neighbor Tom overheard her discussing incompetence and emergency measures on the phone outside your house yesterday, Elaine informed him. Nathan closed his eyes briefly, as if pained. I'll talk to her. Again. I don't think talking is enough anymore, I said, surprising myself with my frankness. Rebecca needs to understand there are consequences to her actions. I won't be bullied or manipulated, not even by my own daughter. Our food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As we ate, James regaled us with stories about school and soccer, seemingly oblivious to the undercurrents of tension among the adults. As we were finishing, Nathan's phone buzzed with a text. He checked it, his expression darkening. "It's Rebecca. She's at your house, Carol. She says she needs to retrieve some personal items before the sale goes through." I exchanged a concerned glance with Elaine. "I didn't give her permission to enter my house." "She still has a key," Nathan reminded me. "I changed the locks," I countered, "after she brought that home health worker to evaluate me without my consent." Nathan looked genuinely alarmed. "Then how is she—" He broke off, his expression shifting to one of dismay. "Carol, we need to go. Now." We quickly paid the bill and hurried to our respective cars. Nathan insisted that James go with Elaine, and me perhaps not wanting his son to witness whatever we might find at the house. As we pulled onto my street, I could see Rebecca's SUV parked haphazardly in the driveway, half on the lawn. More alarmingly, the front door stood wide open. Nathan reached the house first. "Rebecca," he called, entering cautiously. We followed, James sticking close to my side, his earlier exuberance replaced by evident anxiety. The scene inside sent a shock through me. Drawers pulled open, cabinets ajar, papers scattered across the coffee table. We found Rebecca in Frank's study, kneeling beside the desk, a small pry bar in her hand as she worked at the locked bottom drawer. "Rebecca," Nathan's voice cracked with disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" She looked up, her face flushed with emotion. "I'm looking for Dad's will. The real one, not whatever manipulated version Mom is using to justify selling our home." "There is no other will," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "And you're breaking and entering." Rebecca laughed harshly. "It's not breaking and entering when it's your parents' house. It stopped being your house the day you moved out at 18, Elaine interjected sharply. "And legally, it has never been your house. It belongs to Carol." "Stay out of this," Rebecca snapped at my sister before turning back to me. "I know Dad would never have agreed to sell this place. Never. He told me the house would always stay. In the family." "When did he tell you that?" I asked, genuinely curious if she was fabricating this claim or if Frank had once said something she'd misinterpreted. "Many times," she insisted vaguely. "He knew how much this house meant to me." "Mom," James said in a small voice from the doorway, "why are you breaking Grandma's desk?" Rebecca seemed to notice her son's presence for the first time, her expression flickering with something that might have been shame. "James, go wait in the car." "No," Nathan countermanded. "James, go with Aunt Elaine to the kitchen. Now, please." Once they were gone, Nathan turned back to Rebecca, his voice low and controlled. "This ends now. You're trespassing in your mother's home and destroying her property. If you don't stop, I'm calling the police." "You wouldn't dare," Rebecca challenged. "I would," he confirmed grimly. "And think about how that would look to a judge if you still harbor any thoughts of challenging your mother's competency. The rational, stable person in this situation isn't the one breaking into locked drawers with a pry bar." Rebecca stared, at him in disbelief, then at me. "You've turned everyone against me, my own husband, my son, even my father if I believe that convenient letter you claim to have found." "The letter is real," I told her quietly. "And your father wasn't turned against you. He simply saw what I couldn't, that you viewed this house as an entitlement rather than as our home." "Get out," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with fury. "Get out of my sight." "This is my house," I reminded her gently. "If anyone is leaving, it's you." For a moment, I thought she might refuse, might escalate the situation further. But something in Nathan's stern expression, or perhaps the awareness of her son's proximity, seemed to penetrate her anger. She dropped the pry bar, the metallic clang against the hardwood floor punctuating the tense silence. "This isn't over," she warned as she stormed past us. "It is over, Rebecca," I called after her. "It's time for you to accept that." We heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as her SUV backed out of the driveway and sped away. Nathan stood in the study doorway, looking shell-shocked. "Carol, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would go this far." "I know," I assured him. "This isn't your fault." In the kitchen, we found Elaine making hot chocolate for James, who looked subdued but not traumatized. "Is Mom gone?" he asked when we entered. "Yes," Nathan confirmed. "She needed to cool off." James nodded as if this were a familiar explanation. "She gets really mad sometimes, especially since Grandpa died." The simple observation from a 9-year-old struck me with unexpected force. Rebecca's grief over Frank's death had clearly affected her more profoundly than I'd realized. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it better. After Nathan and James left, promising to return the next day to help with more packing, Elaine and I surveyed the damage. Aside from the partially pried drawer in Frank's desk, nothing seemed permanently harmed. "Should we call the police?" Elaine asked as we restored order to the living room. I considered the question carefully. "No," I decided finally. "What purpose would it serve? It would only escalate the situation and potentially damage my relationship with James and Olivia. She broke into your house, Carol. That's a crime." "I know. But she's still my daughter. And she's hurting." Elaine looked skeptical, but didn't argue further. As we continued cleaning up, I found myself returning to James's simple observation. Rebecca's grief had manifested as entitlement and anger, a desperate attempt to hold on to something tangible connected to her father. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a glimmer of genuine compassion for my daughter. Not just maternal obligation, but true empathy. She was handling her loss badly, yes, but she was still grieving. And perhaps in focusing on my own path forward, I'd failed to recognize how adrift she felt without her father's anchoring presence. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Rebecca directly. She didn't answer, which didn't surprise me, but I left a message that came from the heart. "Rebecca, it's Mom. I understand you're angry and hurt. I understand this house represents a connection to your father that you're afraid of losing. But the house isn't Frank. It's just walls and floors and windows. The real connection to your father lives in your heart, in your memories, and in the values he instilled in you. When you're ready to talk, really talk, not argue, I'll be here. I love you. I've always loved you. And I always will." As I hung up, I had no idea if my words would make any difference. But I'd spoken my truth, offered an opening for reconciliation. The rest was up to Rebecca. The weeks following Rebecca's break-in passed in a whirlwind of activity. The house sale proceeded smoothly, with the Chens proving to be ideal buyers, respectful, patient, and genuinely excited about the home that had sheltered my family for 3 decades. The closing was scheduled for the end of the month, giving me just enough time to complete my move to Riverside Meadows. Rebecca remained distant, not responding to my voicemail or subsequent attempts to reach out. Nathan, however, became an unexpected ally, bringing James and occasionally Olivia to help with packing and sorting. While Olivia maintained a cool politeness that reminded me painfully of her mother, James threw himself enthusiastically into the process, particularly when it came to deciding which of Frank's books and keepsakes should come with me to my new home. "Grandpa would want you to have all his favorites," he declared, carefully wrapping Frank's cherished first edition Hemingway in bubble wrap. Elaine extended her stay to help with the move, her practical efficiency keeping me on track when nostalgia threatened to overwhelm me. Together, we transformed the daunting mountain of possessions accumulated over decades into manageable categories. Treasures to bring to my new life, items for family members, donations for worthy causes, and a surprisingly small pile of actual trash. "You and Frank never were ones for clutter," Elaine observed as we sealed the final box of kitchen items. "Makes this whole process considerably easier." The day before the move, a large truck arrived from the local women's shelter to collect the furniture I'd donated. Nearly all the contents of the guest bedrooms, my excess kitchen equipment, and various household items I wouldn't need in my smaller space. As I watched the volunteers carefully load Frank's recliner, the one piece I'd debated longest about keeping, a flash of movement across the street caught my eye. Rebecca's car was parked under the oak tree that marked the entrance to the cul-de-sac, partially hidden by the spring foliage now in full bloom. I could just make out her silhouette in the driver's seat, watching the proceedings. "Should I say something?" I asked Elaine, who had noticed her as well. My sister considered the question. "That depends. What do you want to say?" I thought about it for a moment. "I want to tell her that she's welcome to come inside, that she could still be part of this transition if she wanted to." "Then go tell her," Elaine encouraged. "The worst she can do is drive away." Taking a deep breath, I crossed the street and approached Rebecca's car. She didn't drive off as I half expected, but neither did she roll down her window until I tapped gently on the glass. "Mom," she acknowledged, her voice carefully neutral. Her eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting she'd been crying. "The shelter volunteers are almost finished," I said. "Then the house will be pretty empty. Would you like to come inside? Say goodbye properly?" She hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. "I don't think that's a good idea." "It might be your last chance," I pointed out gently. "We're moving everything to Riverside Meadows tomorrow. The Chens take possession next week." Rebecca stared straight ahead, her hands tight on the steering wheel. "I can't pretend to be happy about this, Mom." "I'm not asking you to pretend anything," I assured her. "I'm just offering you a chance to see the house one more time, if you want to." After what seemed like an eternity, she gave a short nod and switched off the engine. We walked back across the street in silence, the afternoon sun warm against my skin. Inside, the house echoed with emptiness. Most of the furniture was gone, leaving behind only the essentials I'd kept for my final days there, plus a few larger items earmarked for specific family members. The volunteer coordinator was just having me sign the final donation paperwork. "Is this Rebecca?" she asked warmly. "Your sister mentioned you might stop by." Before Rebecca could correct her, Elaine appeared from the kitchen. "Actually, this is Carol's daughter," she clarified, her tone civil but cool. "Rebecca, the volunteers are done if you want to look around." Rebecca nodded stiffly, then moved toward the stairs without a word. I followed her at a distance, giving her space to process the emptiness of the house that had once been so full of life. In her old bedroom, now completely bare except for a single box labeled Rebecca Childhood Mementos, she finally broke, her silence. "You kept my things." "Of course I did," I said, stepping into the room. "They're yours. I thought you might want them, or maybe your children would someday." She knelt beside the box, opening it carefully to reveal yearbooks, report, cards, childhood artwork I'd saved over the years, and a small collection of trophies and ribbons from various competitions. On top lay a framed photograph of Rebecca at about 6 years old, sitting on Frank's shoulders at the state fair, both of them laughing in the golden late-afternoon light. Rebecca picked up the photo, her fingers tracing the edge of the frame. "I remember this day. Dad let me have cotton candy for dinner because you weren't feeling well and stayed home." "That sounds like Frank," I said, smiling at the memory. "He was hopeless at saying no to you." "He was a good father," Rebecca said softly, still looking at the photo. "The best," I agreed. "And he loved you more than anything." She finally looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "I miss him so much, Mom. Sometimes it feels like I can't breathe with him gone." The raw pain in her voice broke something open inside me. I crossed the room and knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders as she began to sob. For the first time since Frank's death, I held my daughter while she truly grieved, not the composed, appropriate grief she'd displayed at the funeral and in the immediate aftermath, but the messy, gut-wrenching sorrow of profound loss. "I know," I murmured into her hair, my own tears flowing freely. "I miss him too, every single day." We sat like that on the bare floor of her childhood bedroom for a long time, united in our love for the man we'd both lost. When her sobs finally subsided, Rebecca wiped her eyes and looked around the empty room. "I always thought my children would grow up coming to this house," she admitted, "having Sunday dinners in the dining room, playing in the backyard like I did. It was so concrete in my mind that I never even questioned it." "I understand," I told her, "but life rarely follows the exact path we imagine, does it?" She gave a watery laugh. "No, it certainly doesn't." She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry about breaking in. That was inexcusable." "It was," I agreed, not wanting to pretend otherwise. "But I understand you were hurting." "That's no excuse," she said, surprisingly firm. "Dad would have been ashamed of me." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but he also would have forgiven you, just as I do." She looked at me with genuine surprise. "You forgive me? After everything I said and did?" "You're my daughter, Rebecca. Nothing can change that." I reached out to take her hand. "I won't pretend the things you did didn't hurt me deeply, but I also know grief can make us behave in ways we normally wouldn't." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Nathan said something similar, right before he told me he'd file for divorce if I went through with trying to challenge your competency. This was news to me." "He did?" "Yes. It was the wake-up call I needed, honestly." She looked down at our joined hands. I was so focused on keeping Dad's legacy intact that I couldn't see I was destroying what really mattered. Our family, right now, as it is. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the empty room in hues of gold and amber. Through the window, I could see the moving truck arriving with the first load of items bound for my new apartment. "Would you like to see my new place?" I asked impulsively. "Not today. It will be chaos with the moving. But maybe next week, once I'm settled, you could bring the children." Rebecca hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that. If you're sure." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "It won't be this house, but it will be my home. And you'll always be welcome there." As we descended the stairs, Elaine looked up from where she was directing the movers, her eyebrows raising in silent question. I gave her a small nod, and her expression softened with understanding. That evening, after Rebecca had gone and the first wave of moving was complete, Elaine and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, watching the fireflies begin to emerge in the twilight. "Do you think she's sincere?" Elaine asked, ever the protective sister. "Or just realizing she's overplayed her hand?" I considered the question carefully. "I think she's genuinely starting to process her grief. Whether that leads to lasting change in how she treats me, that remains to be seen." "Well, I'm proud of you," Elaine declared, raising her glass in a toast. "Not just for standing your ground, but for finding the compassion to offer her a way back." I clinked my glass against hers. "Frank always said forgiveness is a gift you give yourself as much as the other person." Smart man, my brother-in-law. The next day passed in a blur of activity. The movers efficiently transported the last of my possessions to Riverside Meadows, while Elaine and I handled the precious items we didn't trust to anyone else. Frank's letter, family photo albums, my grandmother's pearls, and other irreplaceable treasures. By evening, I was officially installed in my new apartment. Though boxes remained to be unpacked, the essential furniture was in place. The kitchen was functional, and the bed was made up with fresh linens. Standing in the center of my new living room, I felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Elaine poured us each a glass of champagne from a bottle Nathan had thoughtfully delivered earlier. "To new beginnings," she toasted. "To new beginnings," I echoed, taking in the space that was now mine. The large windows overlooked the river, where the setting sun cast a path of golden light across the water. My familiar furniture looked fresh and renewed in these different surroundings, and Frank's beloved books lined the built-in shelves as if they'd always belonged there. This wasn't the future I had imagined for myself 3 years ago when Frank was still alive. It wasn't even the future I'd envisioned 6 months ago when Rebecca first proposed moving me to the basement. But standing there, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where I was meant to be at this stage of my life, not hidden away in a basement, not clinging to a house too large for my needs, but in a vibrant community where I could build a new life while honoring the old. The following week, as promised, Rebecca brought James and Olivia to visit. Their reactions couldn't have been more different. James instantly enchanted by the swimming pool visible from my balcony. Olivia politely reserved but visibly surprised by the apartment's stylish comfort. "It's really nice, Grandma," she finally admitted as we shared tea in the sunny kitchen. "Better than I expected." "What were you expecting?" I asked, genuinely curious. She shrugged, a bit embarrassed. "I don't know. Something more old-fashioned, I guess." Rebecca, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "I think we all had assumptions that weren't accurate about a lot of things." Our eyes met across the table, and I saw in hers a glimmer of the daughter I remembered, thoughtful, capable of growth, worthy of second chances. "Would you like to see the garden plots?" I offered. "I've reserved one for vegetables and herbs. James, you could help me plant the tomatoes you've always liked." As we headed outside into the bright sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. The house that had sheltered one chapter of my life was now providing a new beginning for the Chen family, who would create their own memories within its walls. Meanwhile, I was writing a new chapter of my own, not as Rebecca's convenient basement-dwelling mother, but as Carol Winters, a woman embracing all the possibilities that lay ahead. Sometimes the greatest inheritance we can leave our children isn't a house or money or material possessions. It's the example of living with dignity, courage, and an open heart, even when the path forward looks nothing like the one we'd planned. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.